Hello, welcome to our lesson on decimals. Let's start our lesson by converting a fraction to a decimal. So, do you remember how to do this? In order to convert a fraction to a decimal, you take the numerator, in this case, which is the 3, and you divide it by the denominator, which is the 5. So I set up my division box. I can put 3 inside, 5 on the outside, place my decimal. 5 will not go into 3, so let's add a 0 placeholder in the tens place, and 5 will go into 30 exactly 6 times with no remainder. So this is our decimal for 3/5. It's 0.6. And notice that since this decimal has a 0 remainder and it stops, we call this a terminating decimal. Okay, so that word terminate means it ends, it stops. Okay, so there's an example of a terminating decimal. Okay, let's take 3/8 and let's convert that to a decimal. You can pause your video and then check your answer and see how you did. Okay, welcome back from pausing the video. Let's divide 8 into 3. Again, we have our decimal, 0 placeholder. 8 doesn't go into 3, but it does go 3 times into 30. That's 24 with a remainder of 6. Now, since I have a remainder other than 0, I need to keep dividing. So I add a 0 and bring it down. 8 times 7 is 56. Okay, I'm starting to run out of room. So 60 minus 56, I'll put it over here. It's equal to 4. I would bring down another 0 and then go 8 into 40, which is going to be 5 times. And now I finally get that 0 remainder. So this is also a terminating decimal. The decimal for 3/8 is 0.375 or 375 thousandths. So how'd you do? All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, please take 2/9 and convert it to a decimal. Pause your video and then check your answer. Okay, welcome back from pausing the video. Let's take the number 9 and divide it into 2. Put our decimal and 0 placeholder. 9 does not go into 2, but it does go 2 times into 20. And I have a remainder of 2. Okay, so I don't have a 0 remainder, so I need to keep dividing. So let's add a 0 and bring it down. And I get 9 into 20. Okay, look what's happening. I get 2 again, and look, I have a 2 remainder. If I add another 0 and bring it down, I'm going to be dividing into 20 forever. So this is going to be a repeating decimal, and I would write my answer as just 0.2 and then a bar or a hat on top of the 2. All right, so here we have an example of a repeating decimal where you have the same digit repeating endlessly. So how'd you do? Did you get that answer? 0.2 with a hat? Okay, good. Let's go to our next slide. All right, so now let's convert a decimal to a fraction. So we're going back the other way. So let's start with 0.8. Well, I'm going to use the place value to rewrite 0.8 as a fraction. Well, 8 occupies the tenths place, right? So if I was reading this decimal, I would pronounce it 8/10. So that's how I would write it as a fraction. I would write it 8/10. Now, 8/10 can be reduced because we have the common factor of 2 that we can divide out. And we're always supposed to write our fractions in simplest form. And so this would simplify to 4/5. How many had that one? Okay, good. Go ahead and pause your video. Convert 0.35 into a fraction. Welcome back from pausing the video. Let's use place value to write 0.35 as a fraction. 5 occupies the hundredths place, so I could pronounce this 35 hundredths. That means I would write 35 over 100. However, this is not in simplest form. I can still divide a 5 out of 35 and 100, and therefore this would reduce to 7/20. Did you get that one? Okay, good job. Alright, so now let's focus the remainder of our lesson on how to convert a repeating decimal to a fraction. So here I have 0.3 with the hat, a repeating decimal, and I just can't write this as 3 over 10. Because 3 over 10 as a decimal is 0.3 without repeating. And notice that there would be zeros forever to the right of 0.3, whereas here we have 3's forever. So those are not the same number. Alright, so we need a way to convert our repeating decimal to a fraction. And so here's what we do. We'll set up an equation. We'll let the variable x equal 0.3 repeating. Alright, and then notice that my repeating decimal is in the tenths place. So because of that, I'm going to multiply x by 10. And I would show that by putting 10 next to x. That means 10 times x. Alright, so if I multiply x by 10, and if x is equal to 0.3 repeating, that means to multiply my decimal by 10, I would move my decimal place one space to the right. See that? If you multiply a decimal by 10, you can just move the decimal point one place to the right. So if I do that, that would give me the decimal 3.3 repeating. See that? Because those 3's go forever, forever, if I move my decimal one place to the right, I still have a repeating decimal. Okay, so now I can do this nifty little trick. Watch this. I can now subtract the x from 10x. And x equals 0.3 repeating. So I now set up an equation which allows me to subtract, and notice what happens. Well, 10x minus 1x, that equals 9x. And then here, when I go to subtract these decimals, the repeating part of the decimal subtracts itself out. 0.3 repeating minus 0.3 repeating is 0, and so I have 3 minus 0, which is just 3. And now I can finish by dividing both sides by 9. So x equals 3/9, and 3/9 will reduce to simplest form to 1/3. Okay, so there is the fraction for 0.3 repeating. It's 1/3. Alright, for this example, notice that 0.45 repeating, the 4 and the 5, both are repeating because the bar is over both numbers, and that the 5 occupies the hundredths place. So let's start by letting x equal our repeating decimal. Now, since the 5 is occupying the hundredths place, let's multiply x by 100. That way, when I multiply 0.45 repeating, that decimal will be right on the other side of that repeating 5. So this would give me 45.45 repeating. Now I want to make sure that I do that so that I get 0.45 repeating after the decimal. That way, when I go to subtract the x from 100x, notice that when I line up the decimals, that repeating decimal will subtract itself out. So 100x minus 1x will equal 99x. And then this becomes 0 right there, and 45 minus 0 is just 45. Okay, so I get 45, and now I'm going to divide both sides by 99. Therefore, my fraction is 45/99, but it's not reduced. Let's go ahead and divide by a 9 and reduce to 5/11. So 5/11ths is the fraction that would equal 0.45 repeating as a decimal. All right, go ahead and try this one. Pause your video and then start it to see how you did. All right, welcome back from pausing your video. Let's let x equal 0.4 repeating. Since 4 is in the tens place, I can just multiply x by 10, and that would give me 4.4 repeating. And now I can subtract the x from 10x. And 10x minus 1x equals 9x. And then 4.4 repeating minus 0.4 repeating, the repeating decimal subtracts itself out, and you get just 4. And now divide both sides by 9. So we get the fraction x equals 4/9. Okay, how'd you do? Okay, very good. Thank you for doing a good job. And remember, as always, read some books. Bye.